Africa.
Africa.
Oh, Africa.
It should be no surprise to anyone today that Africa is viewed as the most underdeveloped and penurious continent in the entire planet, despite also being the most blooming in terms of mineral and natural resources, agriculture, and even in human fertility, being the second most populated continent in the world with an estimated population of over 1.3 to 1.4 billion people. But that mentality should be in the past, because in this video I'm going to be showing to you guys a part of Africa you probably haven't seen before. These countries are developing faster than we can keep up, with their annual GDP rivaling and even surpassing those of developed countries in Asia, North America, and even in Europe. In today's video, we're going to be diving into the top 5 richest countries in Africa based on their gross development products and their infrastructural development progress so far. So you might want to stick out to the end because these figures goes insane. But nevertheless, let's dive into it. Starting at number 5, we have Morocco. Morocco, otherwise called the Kingdom of Morocco, is a country in the Arab Maghreb region of North Africa. It overlooks the Mediterranean Sea to the north and the Atlantic Ocean to the west, with land borders with Algeria to the east and the Western Sahara to the south. The country has a population of over 37 million people, with the country's capital, Rabat, having an urban population of 1.2 million. However, Rabat is not the country's largest city. Its largest city, nonetheless, is Casablanca, and is seen as the country's economic and business center with an urban population of over 4 million people. Morocco operates under a parliamentary system just like that of the United Kingdom, where the king is the head of state or ceremonial head, while the head of government is an elected prime minister. Now, Morocco has a variety of natural resources including iron, zinc, copper, and natural gas. However, the country is mostly known for its abundance in phosphates and apatites, used in the production of chemical salt and gemstones. For this reason, the country is ranked in number 50 in Africa with a GDP estimate of $145 billion in 2024 and a purchasing power of over $331 billion in 2025. Now, GDP basically means a country's gross domestic product and basically measures the value of a country's total output of goods and services produced in a certain period of time, mostly 1 year, while PPP or purchasing power parity is more like a monetary conversion rate used to express the purchasing power of value of different countries' currencies in relation to one another in the international market. So now you understand what I mean when I say GDP or purchasing power. Now, Morocco is considered one of the most developed countries in Africa in terms of infrastructural development and was even ranked number 16 in the world in 2022 for the quality and density of its road network. With so many ongoing projects and investments in the rail and rail system, airports, and real estate, the country is sure to stand out even more in less than a decade from now. Morocco also plays a very important role in Africa's wealth, with over 6,800 multi-millionaires in the country, 4 of which are billionaires, including the King of Morocco himself. Now moving on to number 4, we have Algeria. Algeria is another country in the Arab Maghreb region of North Africa, bordered by Tunisia to the northeast, Niger to the southeast, Libya to the east, Morocco to the west, Mediterranean Sea to the north, and Mali, Mauritania, and the Western Sahara to the southeast. So it basically shares borders with 6 other countries excluding the sea and the Western Sahara, making it the largest country in Africa by landmass. Its capital and largest city, Algiers, located in the north on the Mediterranean coast, is known for its political, economic, and cultural centers, its rich history, and many attractions, garnering a population of over 3 million people, which is already over 6% of the country's population of 48+ million people. Algeria is blessed with vast natural resources including such like phosphates, uranium, iron ore, and lead. However, the country's vast production in the oil and gas sector is the backbone of its economy, being the 6th largest exporter of natural gas in the entire planet, and also has the 10th largest natural gas reserves in the world. Now let's talk about GDP and PPP or purchasing power. Algeria stands 4th in Africa in terms of GDP and and purchasing power, having a GDP estimated at $200 billion in 2024 and a purchasing power of over $562 billion in 2025. In other words, the fourth on the list. But let me inform you now that this is probably gonna be the last hundreds of billions you'll be hearing on this list, because the top 3 on the list today has jaw-dropping figures. So be sure to watch to the end to find out the number 1 on the list. But before then, let me also mention that Algeria is a very fast-growing country in terms of infrastructure and has massive and ongoing projects in the road, ports, railway, and the water system of the country as well. Now, though the country is home to just one billionaire, it still has over 2,800 millionaires, with a lot of them rising to the billions. Now, number 3, we have Egypt. Egypt, or officially called the Arabic Republic of Egypt, is a country spanning the northeastern corner of Africa and the Sinai Peninsula in the southwestern corner of Asia. Bordered by the Mediterranean Sea to the north, the Gaza Strip of Palestine and Israel to the northeast, the Red Sea to the east, Sudan to the south, and Libya to the west. With a population of 115 million people, Egypt stands as the 4th most populated country in Africa today. Its capital city, Cairo, stands as its largest city and also the 3rd largest in Africa, behind Lagos in Nigeria and Kinshasa in Congo. With a population of over 10 million people, Cairo stands as one of the most visited cities in Africa, averaging around 14 to 15 million tourists every single year. Egypt's economy relies mainly on agriculture, petroleum imports, natural gas, and tourism. Economy is ranked the 39th in the world and the 2nd in Africa, with a GDP of $387 billion and a purchasing power of $1.2 trillion, ranking as the 2nd highest in GDP in the continent, but the 3rd highest in purchasing power, behind 2 countries, of which we'll talk more on that after this. Hence, Egypt ranks the 3rd richest country in Africa in 2025. Egypt has made very significant improvements in its infrastructures, with a lot of advanced transportation, energy, water, and telecom systems, putting them ahead of a lot of other African countries today. Egypt is home to most of the continent's millionaires, with over 15,000 multi-millionaires in the country today, 7 of which are billionaires and among the wealthiest people in the continent. Moving on to number 2, we have South Africa. The Republic of South Africa is the southernmost part of the continent of Africa that borders to its south the South Atlantic and the Indian Ocean, to its north Namibia, Botswana, and Zimbabwe, to the east Mozambique and Eswatini, and encloses the kingdom or country of Lesotho. The country has a population of over 60 million people, with its administrative capital Pretoria having a population of about 2.8 million people. The country also has some of the biggest and most developed cities in the whole of Africa, like Johannesburg, for example, one of the biggest cities in Africa and also probably the most developed, and others like the country's administrative capital, Cape Town, which really isn't a big city but is more like a camp for the rich and wealthy, precisely the wealthiest city or neighborhood or town in the whole of Africa. And then there are also some other developed large cities like Durban and Soweto with millions of occupants, among many others as well. Now, South Africa, I would say, is probably the most developed and also probably the most economically stable in the continent. If you feel otherwise, please let me know your thoughts in the comment down below. However, it is not the richest or the number 1 in terms of their purchasing power. It does has the highest GDP for the year 2024, with the gross domestic product estimated at a whopping $420 billion, but its purchasing power is estimated at still an impressive $1.03 trillion, or $1,030 billion, putting it as the 3rd on the ranking using their purchasing power. So basically, Egypt ranks the 2nd in GDP and 2nd in purchasing power, while South Africa ranks the 1st in the total domestic output or GDP and 3rd in purchasing power, hereby putting South Africa ahead of Egypt on this list. Now, South Africa is the largest economy in Africa despite being the 2nd richest, and is also very abundantly blessed with a lot of minerals, being the world's largest reserve of gold, platinum, chrome ore, and manganese ore, and is also the 2nd largest reserve of zirconium, vanadium, and titanium. South Africa's mining sector is basically the largest in Africa and one of the largest in the world today. Now, South Africa is not just one depending on mining sector, also earns ginormously from their transportation, energy, manufacturing, tourism, and agricultural sector as well. South Africa also has the most millionaires in the continent, with over 37,000 millionaires in the country, which is basically already about 1/3 of the whole continent's millionaires. And among these millionaires are 6 billionaires, one of which includes the Cartier Jewelry CEO Johann Rupert, who is also the 2nd richest man in the continent with a net worth of $9.5 billion. finally at number 1, we have Nigeria. Nigeria, or the Federal Republic of Nigeria, is yet still the richest country in the continent of Africa. And I said yet because the country over the last 2-3 years has been facing a very traumatic economic freefall, probably one of the worst in the continent, or perhaps the most noticed, probably because it was and had been in the limelight as the largest economy in the continent and also the richest in terms of both the annual gross domestic product, or GDP, and also their purchasing power, before dropping by some hundreds of billions of dollars. In other words, allowing other countries like South Africa and Egypt to climb past it. Today, it still stands as the third richest in terms of GDP with an estimate of about $375 billion in 2024. However, still maintaining its very high purchasing power, being the most populated country in the continent with over 250 million people, and also having the highest oil reserve in the continent, and being the 7th largest exporter of oil in the world as well. Nigeria is still able to claim the number 1 spot on this list with a purchasing power of over $1.5 trillion today, surpassing other countries with several hundreds of billions of dollars still. Though Nigeria is basically oil money, it is still blessed with a lot of other minerals like coal, steel, and a very fertile land for agriculture, of which is very unfortunately neglected by the government. And while it might seem like I am being rather biased, or maybe driven by frustration of my country, if you are Nigerian and you have something else to say, then please fuck yourself. While Nigeria might seem like nothing is really happening, it still has amazing and hardworking people, about 5 of which are multi-billionaires, including the richest man in the continent, Aliko Dangote. He is also the richest black person in the world, so I guess 1 point for Nigeria.